Give us the child!
Vince Mercer demanded, reaching past Waitstill Tate. Zachariah Farley stepped between them, his open hand beside, not on the colt at his hip, while 8-year-old Bashie clung to Waitstill's skirts, and 6 men closed a half-circle in the street.
Men give away cattle, Zachariah said. You will ask the boy, and you will hear the woman who raised him.
Mercer stopped with his arms still out. The men behind him glanced at one another. Bashie stood almost hidden behind Waitstill, except for his frightened eyes, and one dusty boot beside the small saddle lying in the road. Zachariah had offered the saddle only minutes before. He had paid too much for it, believing a handsome gift might prove he was no longer the penniless ranch hand Waitstill's father had driven away 8 years ago. Waitstill had seen Mercer watching and refused it in front of the town. "The boy does not need the pity of a man with land," she had said. The words had cut Zachariah. Then Bashie had flinched, as though the rejection belonged to him too, and the hurt in Zachariah had turned to something colder. Mercer had stepped off the boardwalk at once. He claimed Bashie's late father had left $40 unpaid to Willis Freight and had marked a labor bond before dying. Under the terms Mercer described, the 8-year-old would work without wages for the freight line, with food and lodging charged against him, until he came of age. Mercer carried only a copied account, not the original bond, and not an order from a territorial judge, but he spoke with the confidence of a man accustomed to making poor people mistake his voice for law. "You have no blood right here," Farley Mercer said. "No paper over the woman or the orphan either." "I do not need paper to stand in a street." "The boy was pledged to the freight line." Mercer pointed at Bashie. "He goes west on Sunday's coach." Zachariah's first instinct was to pay the $40. He could have placed the money in Mercer's palm before the dust settled. Money was the answer he trusted, because Waitstill's father had once said he lacked it. Then Waitstill's fingers brushed the back of his coat. The touch was brief, but he felt the tremor in it. Paying would leave Mercer's lie standing. Bashie would still hear that a child could be priced, transferred, and bought back by whichever man had the deepest pocket. "The boy stays with me," Waitstill said. Her voice shook once, then sharpened. "You will not touch him." Mercer smiled. "I will return Sunday at noon. By then, perhaps Miss Tate will have remembered what a single schoolmistress can and cannot keep." He tipped his hat and walked away. His men followed, leaving a wide ring of trampled dust around the 3 people he had tried to separate. Zachariah picked up the little saddle by its horn. He did not hand it to Bashie. He did not explain himself. He looked at Waitstill's pale face and asked the only useful question he had left. "Where do you need me to stand?" Her breath left her unevenly. "Close enough that he sees you stayed." 8 years earlier, Zachariah had worked cattle on the Tate estate in Texas. Waitstill had been the owner's daughter, too curious to obey quietly and too kind to pretend the hired men were furniture. She used to meet Zachariah in the stable loft with books under her arm. He would mend harness while she read aloud, and afterward they argued over every ending. Her father discovered them before either had found the courage to name what was growing between them. "He wants the deed, not you," the old man told her within Zachariah's hearing. Then he gave Zachariah until sundown to leave. Zachariah left before noon. That was the part Waitstill had never forgiven. He had believed poverty made his choice for him. He had never asked whether she wished to choose too. He spent the next years driving cattle north and saving wages until he bought a modest ranch half a day from the trading post. He had cattle credit and a name the bank recognized. None of it changed the way Waitstill looked at him when he returned, as though he had come back wearing the answer to a question she had never asked. She had changed too. After refusing her father's demand that she stop teaching the children of drovers and laborers, She walked away from his money. She now lives behind Nellie's store and teaches in a drafty lean-to. 2 years earlier, fever took a migrant couple near Fort Union. Waitstill buried them, then took in their 5-year-old son because no one else stepped forward. She simply moved Bashie's pallet beside her stove and taught him his letters. The morning after Mercer's threat, Zachariah found her sweeping the schoolroom step. Bashie sat on a crate with a length of twine in his hands, watching each wagon that passed with the particular stillness of a child who kept himself ready to leave. Waitstill looked at Zachariah's new canvas coat. That garment is proof a steer lived an honorable life, only to meet a foolish end. Zachariah glanced down at it. The steer did honest work. The coat has yet to begin. Her mouth nearly smiled. That was more than he had earned. She nodded toward a notice nailed beside the stage office. Mercer had written that Bashie would be delivered to Willis Freight on Sunday to satisfy the disputed account. There was no judge's seal beneath it, only Mercer's name and 2 men's marks. "I will pay the 40, Zachariah said. Waitstill caught his wrist before he could reach into his coat. "No, I can afford it." "That is not the point." Her fingers tightened. "If you pay him, Mercer wins the argument. Bashie learns that his safety depends upon which man opens his purse. What happens the next time someone decides I am too poor, too unmarried, or too inconvenient to be his mother? Do you buy him again?" Zachariah looked toward Bashie. The boy appeared occupied with the knot, but his hands had stopped moving. Money had carried Zachariah out of hunger. It had bought land and winter feed. It had never taught him how to remain when remaining gave him no authority. He withdrew his empty hand. "Then tell me what you need instead." Waitstill studied him, perhaps searching for the pride hidden inside the offer. "A wagon," she said at last. 3 days. I have lessons promised at the ranches around the post. I need those parents to know Bashie as my pupil and my son before Mercer turns him into an entry in an account book. You have the wagon." A soft scrape came from behind them. Bashie had pulled a worn flour sack from under the crate. Into it he placed a spare shirt, a tin spoon, and his primer. He was packing. Zachariah crouched in front of him. He did not take the sack or promise that grown men would behave better. "My buckboard has room," he said, "in case a fellow had school supplies to carry today." Bashie looked at the sack, then at Zachariah. Slowly he pushed it beneath the crate. He left it packed, but he left it there. For the next 2 days, Zachariah drove Waitstill and Bashie across the scrubland east of the post. They stopped at adobe homes, small cattle spreads, and a sheep camp near the river. Waitstill taught sums with pinto beans, spelling from flour labels, and distances from the ruts of the Santa Fe Trail. She directed every stop. Zachariah handled the team, moved benches, and kept his opinions where she had not asked for them. Whenever Bashie climbed down, Zachariah waited for the boy to hold out his arms before lifting him. It was no accident. Zachariah knew what it was to have a stronger man decide that asking was unnecessary. At the second ranch, a trail acquaintance rode up and grinned at the sight of them. "Farley, you bought yourself a ready-made family before buying winter water." Zachariah straightened from the wagon wheel. He had a reply ready, and it was not gentle. Waitstill spoke first. "Mr. Farley has not yet earned a thank you from me. I would not credit him with an entire family." The rancher laughed, tipped his hat, and moved on. Zachariah looked at her. "You rescued my reputation. I corrected his arithmetic. Was I worth nothing, or merely less than a family? Keep driving, and I may assign a value by supper." Bashie laughed from the wagon bed. It was the first time Zachariah had heard the sound without fear following close behind it.
Late that afternoon, Bashie pulled back the wagon tarp and found the little saddle beneath it. He traced the stamped leather with one finger. "Do gifts always turn into debts?" he asked. Zachariah kept his eyes on the trail. "Only when the giver expects payment." "Do you know?" He eased the horses through a wash. "I bought it because there is a pony at my place with too much leisure. But a saddle is useless unless a boy chooses to sit in it. It can stay beneath that tarp until the mice inherit it." Bashie considered this. "Mice cannot ride." "Then I made a poor investment." Waitstill turned her face toward the open country, but Zachariah saw the smile she tried to hide. He wanted that smile turned toward him. The wanting unsettled him more than Mercer's men had. He had returned believing land would make him worthy of Waitstill. Now, each mile beside her taught him that worth was not something he could purchase and present. It was something she would have to witness, day after day, while remaining free to refuse him. That evening, he left the saddle under the tarp. The community supper on Friday was held in the storage barn behind Nellie's store. Mercer had spent the day telling anyone who listened that Waitstill was using Bashie to gain Zachariah's ranch, and that refusing the freight account proved she cared more for pride than for the child. When Waitstill entered with Bashie, chairs shifted, voices lowered. A clear ring of empty floor formed around the back table she chose. Zachariah arrived moments later, his face washed and a clean shirt on his back, though he could not explain why either had suddenly seemed important. From the doorway, he saw Mercer surrounded by admirers, and Waitstill dividing beans and cornbread as if the empty benches meant nothing. The old Zachariah would have confronted Mercer. The poorer, younger Zachariah would have left before anyone could watch him be unwelcome. He filled a plate and sat across from Bashie. "Evening." Waitstill held her fork too tightly.
"My reputation still has a chance to outrun you. You need not sit here." "That reputation never learned to ride. I doubt it will get far." Bashie made a surprised snorting sound, then covered his mouth. Waitstill's shoulders loosened. Zachariah asked the boy about the day's hardest sum. Bashie described a problem involving 6 wagons, 3 broken wheels, and a mule that refused to count as useful property. "The mule is correct," Zachariah said. "Never let a teacher assign value without evidence." Waitstill gave him a look. "I can move you to another table." "There appears to be ample room." Bashie laughed again, louder this time. A woman at the neighboring table looked over. Then she shifted her chair back a little, opening space rather than closing it. Zachariah stayed through the meal. He did not buy drinks or challenge anyone to defend Waitstill. He simply remained where leaving would have been easier. At the end, Waitstill opened a small jar of preserved peaches. There was 1 peach inside. She cut it into 3 portions and placed one on Zachariah's plate. Nothing entrusted to him had felt as weighty as that third of a peach. "Tomorrow," Waitstill said without looking up. "Come see what one room can hold." Zachariah spent Friday night clearing the spare room at his ranch. For years it had held broken tack and old account books. He scrubbed the floor, mended the window latch, and built 2 low shelves. He moved a narrow desk beneath the window. Then he stood in the doorway and fought the urge to do more. A bed would look like a decision already made. A lock would look worse. He left the room open. Waitstill arrived Saturday morning in Nellie's buggy, carrying a wooden crate. Bashie was not with her. He had remained at the store to help Nellie stack flour sacks. Zachariah moved toward the crate, then stopped. "Would you like a hand?" "I would like the door held." He held it. Inside, Waitstill examined the shelves and the desk. From the crate, she removed primers, slates, a jar of chalk, and Bashie's small wooden slate board. In the upper corner she wrote, Bashie Ogden, in neat letters. Zachariah's throat tightened at the sight of the boy's full name. Mercer called him an obligation. Waitstill wrote his name where it could remain. I did not know whether you would bring his things, Zachariah said. He needs to know a room can wait without claiming him. She placed the slate on the shelf. If he chooses to come, this will be a schoolroom before it is anything else. Zachariah glanced at the cleared floor.
And where would I keep the broken harness? You may enroll in it. Its penmanship cannot be worse than yours. He smiled before he could stop himself. Then hoofbeats approached hard from the south. Vince Mercer rode into the yard with 2 men. He remained mounted, making Zachariah look up at him. I hear your creek bed is dry, Mercer called. It is. Mercer drew a folded document from his coat. I can lease you the Sweetwater crossing through winter. Enough flow to save 1/3 of your herd. Zachariah knew the value of what was being offered. Without water, he would have to drive cattle to market early and accept whatever price buyers chose. Years of work could be narrowed to a small herd and a mortgaged house. What do you want? Stay away from the post tomorrow. Let Miss Tate turn over the boy. Take the water and keep what you built. Waitstill stood in the doorway behind Zachariah. She said nothing. She would not purchase his loyalty by asking for it. He unfolded the document. Mercer's name appeared above the line marked Lesser, though no recorder's seal showed at the bottom. Zachariah noticed the absence and wondered what else Mercer had learned to sell without owning. For one ugly moment, he saw the life the paper offered cattle through winter, respect at the bank, proof that Waitstill's father had been wrong about him. Then he looked at the slate bearing Bashie's name. Zachariah folded the paper and pushed it back into Mercer's coat. I have been poor before, Vince. I have never been cheap. Mercer's face hardened. He urged his horse close enough that the animal's chest nearly struck Zachariah. You are playing father to a brat who belongs to a freight line. By winter you will have neither boy nor herd. He raised his riding crop toward the doorway. And the Tate woman will learn. Zachariah caught the bridle and forced the horse's head aside. He did not draw his colt. He did not need it. You will address her with respect, he said quietly, or you will discover how far a ruined rancher can pull you from a saddle. Mercer jerked the reins free. Noon tomorrow. He wheeled away, his men following. Zachariah watched until the dust thinned. He was not ashamed of standing between Mercer and the doorway. He was ashamed that part of him wanted Waitstill to witness the price he had refused, as though sacrifice might purchase what money could not. You may lose your herd, she said. Yes. You did not have to do that for Bashie. He turned. I did not do it only for Bashie. The truth felt rough in his mouth, but he had hidden behind silence long enough. Every mile I drove these 8 years, I thought I was building a man you could respect. I came back with land because I still did not understand the thing you asked of me before I left. I never asked for land. No. You wanted me to stay long enough to ask what you chose. He removed his hat. I want you at this ranch. I want your books on my shelves and your arguments at my table. But I will not make your gratitude carry the weight of an answer. Waitstill's eyes brightened. She took one step toward him, then stopped. I cannot choose you because of what you refused today, she said. I will not become another account you settled. I know. Zachariah's heart struck once, hard enough to hurt. Tomorrow the choice is yours. She looked past him into the open room. Then stand where I can see you. Sunday morning, the Farley yard was filled with wagons. Waitstill held her promised harvest lesson beneath the porch roof,
Children sat on blankets with slates on their knees. Parents stood near the corral, watching her turn sacks of beans, lengths of rope, and wagon measures into arithmetic. Zachariah moved benches, watered teams, and kept two curious calves from eating a spelling card. Waitstill directed him without ceremony. When Nellie arrived carrying bread, she looked around and said, "A fine rescue, Mr. Farley." Waitstill took the basket from her. He supplied a yard. I supplied the school. Bashie supplied the better handwriting. No one is being rescued. Zachariah felt the words settle inside him. Not savior and dependent. Not a landowner and a poor relation. Work beside work.
Near the corral, Bashie stared at the pony wearing the small saddle. Zachariah had placed it there before dawn and left the reins looped over the fence. Bashie looked first at Waitstill. She nodded. A gift freely given may be freely used. The boy tried to lift the saddle, although it was already on the pony, then discovered Zachariah had left one strap loose for him to fasten. Zachariah crouched beside him and held the leather steady while Bashie pulled the cinch. "Can I name the calves?" Bashie asked. "That depends," Zachariah said. "How cruel are your intentions? One is called arithmetic. Then I must protect the other." Waitstill laughed. The sound crossed the yard and caught Zachariah with the unreasonable force of a hand around his heart. Near 11:30, she brought him beef, folded in flatbread. "Eat. You command this ranch with alarming ease. Your cattle show poor discipline." "They learned it from the owner." Her smile faded as the stage bell sounded faintly from the post road. "We must go." Zachariah set down the food. "Do you want to be ahead of you?" "No." She brushed chalk from his shoulder. Her fingers remained there for one breath. "I do not want you to clear the street. I do not want you to speak for me. Stand where I can see you and let me do the asking." "I can do that." This time, he knew it was not a small promise. At noon, the westbound coach waited outside the trading post, its horses stamping at flies. Mercer stood on the boardwalk with the same men from Friday. The parents from the morning lesson arrived behind Waitstill's wagon and gathered along the street. Waitstill stepped down, holding Bashie's hand. Zachariah followed and took his place to her left, half a pace behind. His Colt remained holstered. His money remained in his coat. Mercer opened his pocket watch. "Time is up." "Show the original bond," Waitstill said. Mercer's eyes narrowed. "You have seen the account. I have seen your copy. Show the bond bearing Mr. Ogden's mark. Show an order from a probate judge placing his son in your custody." The crowd murmured. Mercer descended from the boardwalk. "A child does not decide the law." "No," Waitstill said. "And neither do you." She knelt in the street until she was level with Bashie. She held both his hands, not to restrain him, but to steady them. "Bashie Ogden, you are not a debt. You are my son by every choice that matters. I have chosen you each morning for 2 years. Today, with everyone listening, I am asking what no one asked when your parents died. Where do you wish to live?" Bashie looked at the coach, then at Mercer. Last, he looked over Waitstill's shoulder toward Zachariah. "I want to stay with you," he said, his voice breaking but clear. "And I want to name the calves." Soft laughter moved through the crowd. The coach driver smiled and settled his reins across his knees. Mercer seized Bashie's upper arm. Zachariah moved before the boy could cry out. He caught Mercer's wrist and peeled his hand away. "Take your hand off him." Bashie stumbled sideways and wrapped both arms around Zachariah's thigh, pressing his face against the rancher's coat. Zachariah felt the child trembling through the canvas, but he kept his eyes on Mercer. Mercer reached toward his coat. Zachariah's palm settled on the butt of his Colt, but he did not draw. The street went still. Then Waitstill stepped between the two men. "Enough," she said. Zachariah released Mercer at once and stepped back because she had asked for the ground. Bashie moved with him still clinging to his hip. The choice belonged to her.
Waitstill faced the coach driver. "Will you carry a frightened child away for a man who cannot show lawful custody?" The driver spat into the dust. "Not on my coach." One of the parents stepped beside Waitstill. "Nor will Mercer find a wagon from my spread." Another rancher joined him. Then the woman whose daughter had counted miles with pinto beans came forward and placed a hand on Bashie's shoulder. "We will ride with Miss Tate to the county seat tomorrow," she said. "The judge can hear the truth from all of us." Mercer's face darkened. "Stand aside." No one moved. His hand dropped to the revolver beneath his coat. Leather creaked as Zachariah took one deliberate step forward. He did not clear his holster. He only put his body between Mercer's gun hand and the child gripping his leg. "You reach for that weapon," Zachariah said, his voice low enough that the crowd leaned in to hear. "And every witness here will know which man chose violence over a boy's answer." Mercer's fingers closed around the grip. For one breath, Zachariah saw the whole street narrow to the distance between two holsters. The younger man he had once been would have drawn first and called speed a kind of justice. The man Waitstill had asked to stand beside her kept his Colt where it was. Waitstill did not look away from Mercer. "You came here claiming law," she said. "Draw that gun, and you confess before the town that you never had any." The coach driver rose halfway from his box, shotgun resting across his knees. Two ranchers spread apart, giving Mercer no clean path and no friendly face. Bashie tightened his hold on Zachariah. At last, Mercer's hand fell empty to his side. His shoulders dropped, and one boot scraped backward through the dust, a surrender every witness could see. The breath the street had been holding broke all at once. Mercer looked at the line forming against him. His authority had always depended upon each frightened person believing he stood alone. "You will regret this," he said. "Perhaps," Waitstill replied, "but Bashie will regret nothing chosen for him today." She turned her back on Mercer and walked to Zachariah. The street waited. "I will not come to your ranch as charity," she said. "I bring my school, my wages, my stubbornness, and one boy who intends to burden your carbs with names. I bring myself. Do you want us there?" Zachariah had imagined many versions of winning her. None had taught him that the right answer would feel less like victory than surrender. "I want you," he said. His voice roughened, but he let the whole town hear it. "Not because you need my land. Not because I refused Mercer. I want the life that becomes possible when you are in it. If you choose me, I will spend my years proving I know the difference." Waitstill's eyes filled. She held out her hand. "Then come home with us." He took it. He did not pull her against him or make a spectacle of the moment. He stood beside her, their joined hands visible between them. Bashie loosened his hold on Zachariah's leg and slipped his smaller hand into the rancher's free one. Zachariah's gun hand was full, and he had never felt better armed. Mercer opened his mouth, but no one turned to hear him. The driver cracked his whip. The coach rolled west without Bashie, and the town remained in the street long enough to watch the child climb into Zachariah's wagon. By choice. 2 days later, Nellie drove to the ranch with a small wooden trunk and news from the county seat. "The judge sent word," she said. "Mercer had no custody order. The bond he described was never filed,
and the only account he produced bore his own hand. He will not try that trick again soon, not with half the district ready to testify. Waitstill closed her eyes for one quiet moment. Zachariah watched her shoulders lower, as though she had been carrying Bashie's weight in both arms for 2 years, and had only now been permitted to set down the fear. Then Nellie tapped the trunk. "This is another matter. Your father left it with me. He said to give it to you when you abandoned teaching and asked for help. You have done neither, but I decided the dead should not be allowed to set conditions forever." Inside lay old letters and a certified copy of a recorded deed. Years earlier, Waitstill's father had purchased the Sweetwater crossing and placed it in her name, perhaps intending one day to lure her back with it. Mercer, who also acted as a land broker, had seen the record. The lease he offered Zachariah had been worthless. Waitstill read the first page of her father's letter. His words predicted she would fail with another man's child and return begging for the land he had preserved for her. She crossed to the kitchen stove and laid the letter on the coals. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. When she returned to the porch, she held the deed against her skirt. "I own the Sweetwater crossing," she said, "and the south pasture beyond it." Zachariah removed his hat. "I appear to have rejected an especially poor bargain." "I am offering a better one. You may water your herd there through winter." "What is the price?" "The schoolroom receives first use of the spring. Bashie names no more than half the calves, and you stop behaving as though accepting help is a moral failure." "That last condition is severe." "It is not open to negotiation." He looked at her, at the woman who had refused his money, and then offered him water without making either of them smaller. "I accept." Waitstill placed the deed against his chest. "That sounded almost easy." "It is easier when the person offering knows I may refuse." Her expression softened. "And will you?" Zachariah covered her hand with his. "Not this time." Through the open window came the scrape of a chair. Bashie knelt inside the spare room, beside a narrow bed they had carried in together that morning. From beneath it he pulled the flour sack. He removed the tin spoon, his spare shirt, and the primer, arranging each item on the low shelf. Then he folded the empty sack and set it beside his slate instead of keeping it packed. Outside, the pony waited at the fence, with the small saddle on its back. Waitstill kept her land. Bashie kept his name. Zachariah kept no account of what either owed him. At supper, Waitstill placed the last preserved peach in the center of the table and cut it into 3 pieces. This time, Bashie cut a 4th. "For the calf called arithmetic?" Zachariah asked. "For Nellie," Bashie said. "She is coming tomorrow." Waitstill looked at Zachariah across the lamplight. "It appears the room can hold more than we thought." He reached across the table, palm up, and waited. She placed her hand in his. Zachariah had spent 8 years building a life he believed would make him worthy of being chosen. In the end, worth had begun with something quieter, asking where to stand, staying there, and leaving room for an answer.